This video is going to cover adding a background image to your scene in Maya. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing this in Maya versus in compositing, but I'm not going to go over those. I'm just going to talk about how to actually do this in Maya. There are other ways to add background images in Maya. Some advantages of using the image plane method are it's very easy to set up. You don't have to worry about aspect ratios or messing with UVs or geometry, or accidentally casting shadows with your background objects and that kind of business. It's also visible in any view mode, so I can do it in shaded and textured, even in wireframe I can see it. Some disadvantages are you can't render it with hardware 2.0 and maybe not some other renderers as well, and it would be difficult to create a good sort of sweeping background that you could do a big pan through, but it is really good for a lot of things, so I'll just go ahead and show you how to do it. The first thing you're going to need to do is switch into the camera that you want to add the background image to. So I'll switch to my shot here, go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, navigate to your image and pull it in. By default, Maya will do this in what's called attach to camera. So now whatever I do with my camera here, the image plane is going to stay exactly in the same place. So if you can imagine a shot where I have an animated camera, obviously this is not going to work because the image is staying in the same place as my shot moves. If you have a totally static camera, then you can use this method, and I'll show you how to set that up now. My camera actually does have one cut in it, so I'm not going to be able to use this method, but I'll show you how to do it in case yours has no movement at all. So what you'll need to do is change your depth and your offset here, and then you'll need to change the size for this in the attribute editor, because this aspect ratio is really wide compared to my output shot rate aspect ratio. If you have an image that is already basically matches what your output aspect ratio is, you won't have to do the size part of this because this automatically matches or fits to the resolution gate. So let's say, for instance, I had a 16:9 aspect ratio image as my source. I wouldn't need to do any sizing on this. So let me go ahead and push this back. You can see right now I can't even see my snowman. A lot of my background is actually occluded by this right now. So I'll grab the depth slider, and I'll just do this on virtual sliders. So it looks like I have to go a long way, so I'll add Shift modifier key, and that'll push it back quicker. So there it gets pushed back. But notice that it stayed exactly the same size as it moved back because it's just fit to this resolution gate. Again, that's an advantage if you have something that is the right size, and maybe a disadvantage in this particular case. So I'll have to go ahead and go into my attribute editor to make a change to this. I can get there by just pressing Control A. That'll bring up the image plane because it's selected. Alternatively, if you want to select it, if it's not selected, you can choose component mode and then click the question mark down here at the end, and that'll allow you to select it. Or further, if you don't want to select it, you can just choose View, Image Plane Attributes, and grab your image plane there. So this is what I was talking about. It comes in attached to camera, so we're going to make a change to this in a minute. But for now, I'll go ahead and show you how to finish up in case you're doing one you need to change size as well. So what you'll do is you'll change this size value here. So I push this up, and it will maintain aspect ratio here. So I'll just make that big enough to fill my frame, and then I would need to go back. I could do it from attribute editor as well, but I prefer the channel box, and grab these offsets and move them around. And these are pretty sensitive, so you'll need to probably add the control modifier when you're doing your virtual sliders. So something like that. So that looks fine for this particular shot, so I would maybe scrub ahead, but notice there the image stays static, everything else moves. It doesn't make any sense at all, so I couldn't use this method for this camera because there's motion in the camera. So if you have a static shot, you can use that method right there. If you have any sort of movement in your camera, you're actually going to need to change this. So again, with the image plane selected, I'll go into the attribute editor. I'm going to go ahead and detach this guy here. And sort of up at the top, there was attached to camera. We want to change it to fixed. You change it to fixed, it's going to really change the size of the image here, because now it's using these controls. So center and width and height. These are for fixed image, and offset and depth, as well as size in the attribute editor, are for attached to camera. It's not very clear in the way they're titled here, but that is how it works. So I'll need to grab width and height here and start pushing that up. I'll just hold shift down to get a bigger change, and that would basically fit or fill the frame. But this needs to move back in space because you can see it's actually cut off most of my landscape here. So I need to move this back in space, and this won't maintain size. I'll actually have to size this up again manually. So once I move it back, then I can, whoops, I'm moving it forward. I'll go ahead and move this back. I need to make it, looks like considerably larger. So I'll just keep moving this back. Now, again, I'll hold the shift key, and there it just went through my geometry. So that's finally back far enough. And I'll go ahead and recenter this thing a little bit here. Something like that will be okay. Okay. So, yeah, maybe something like that looks okay. So that looks fine for this shot, and as I move ahead, I'll actually see there's quite a lot of change here. The image, this shot is quite a lot larger, and the image doesn't fill the frame at all anymore. So what I would need to do is actually either match this, so go ahead and make this as big as it needs to be here, and then size it down over here, because the result would be that this would look way too zoomed in, or alternatively just go ahead and start keying if I like the way this looks. So if I'm happy with this being here, then I might want to go ahead and drop a key on it just before the cut and then size it up to where it looks good in the other one. So I'm actually going to change this up just a little bit so that it's a little bit closer to the top and maybe just looks like maybe just a little bit bigger. So go ahead and size this guy up. I just want to get rid of this ground down here. Maybe something like that looks okay to me. So I'll select channels, set the key, and then one frame ahead shows me my cut. So again, I'll grab width and height here. I'll just size this up, hold the shift modifier so that I can scale quickly. Maybe something like this. I sort of like the mountains being a little low, so I think it just doesn't look like it's going to quite work with this image. I'll just do something like this. And I like those clouds, so I'm going to just bring those over just a little bit more. Get that kind of shift there. Okay, that'll give me a little bit more space to bring this image down. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and set a key here, and then I can play through and get both different perspectives on the background. And it feels a little weird. This is what I'm seeing in the other shot, but hopefully that explains the idea. I would need to do a little bit of tweaking to make this make a little bit more sense in the cut, but it works. You can see the background fills the frame in both of these shots. So if I were to render this with software renderer, this is a pretty large frame, so it's going to take over for a sec here. Everything will work fine. You see the image plane works out fine with the background. But again, this does not work with hardware renderer 2.0 or viewport 2.0. So I'll just turn that on. And this has a lot of advantages using hardware 2.0. Leverages your graphics card, and you can do real-time shadows, real-time ambient occlusion, real-time motion blur. So there are a lot of reasons why you'd want to use viewport 2.0, and it's too bad that the image planes just don't work here. And it's not just a viewport thing, because if I actually change my renderer to hardware 2.0 and run that frame again, lickety split, it's out, but you can see it's all just knocked out to alpha, so it's not working here. So there are definitely some advantages of using image planes. There are a couple of drawbacks, but I'll cover setting up a background image using geometry in the next video, and that gets around the other issues, but it has the drawbacks of it's a little bit more in depth to get set up properly.